This is James with Net News Ledger. We're just about to go at the Candidates Forum brought to you by the Chamber of Commerce. And this is election 2019 coverage on Politics 2.0. Stay tuned. We're just about ready to go here at Confederation College with all of the candidates on stage for Thunder Bay Superior North.
Check 1 2, check 1 2.
Good evening, everyone. If I can get you to take your seats, we'll get started. How's the sound? Can anybody hear me? No. Okay. He is going to check the sound. Testing, testing. We're working on it. Thanks everybody for coming. Please find a seat. We're just going to get the sound levels checked, and then we'll get started with the official program. He is in the sound room. So check, check, check. Can everybody hear that? No. Not quite. Okay. We're going to keep turning it up a little bit. Check, check, check. It is on. How's that? Okay, we might work with this. Okay, we'll get started. So I'm Charlotte Robinson, the president of the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce, and I'm pleased to serve as your moderator this evening. Welcome to the Candidates Forum for the Thunder Bay Superior North, followed by Thunder Bay Rainy River ridings. If you are using social media tonight, please use the hashtag TBayDebate. The issues that are discussed here tonight affect our community, and it's important that you have an opportunity to hear the views of the candidates and their parties in order to make an informed decision on Election Day, October 21st. The order of speaking has been determined by draw, and the questions will rotate from stage left to right. The questions will be posed to the candidates by the panelists. Each of the candidates will have 60 seconds for their answer, and then the receiving candidate will have 30 seconds to rebut. The candidates will only be able to speak within the allocated time. We do have notice cards that will be shown when 10 seconds remain. Call and put your, so you know where you're looking. And then when the time is up, there is a red card, and we will cut you off and move on. I do remind the candidates that they have pledged to be respectful, to not engage in name-calling, and to not interrupt each other when speaking. The candidates will not use inappropriate language and will listen to me. And the audience is also asked to please remain quiet while the candidates are speaking, but you are welcome to applaud at the end of each candidate's response. So our panelists tonight, we have Bonnie Crisawati, the social researcher for the Lakehead Social Planning Council, Jason Racevich, president of the Anishinaabe Business Professionals Association, Dr. Charles Levko, Canada Research Chair in Sustainable Food Systems, and Nathan Lawrence, Chair of the Board from the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce. Our first forum is the candidates for the Thunder Bay Superior North riding, and we will start with 1-minute opening statements by each candidate, beginning with candidate Poulia.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Frank Poulia and I'm running to be your next Member of Parliament to help realize the amazing potential of our region that currently has one of the lowest growth rates in the country. We can and should be doing better. What we're hearing at the door is that our citizens do not want the politics of scandals, fear, and division of the Trudeau's Liberals, but a clear plan on how to make life more affordable, create jobs, protect the environment, as well as health care and social programs. We need Made in the North solutions, so that FedNo does not allow ministerial bureaucrats to turn down local applications like those of Terrace Bay Marathon for internet broadband that are vital for the regional economy. We need an MP and a government that supports and not attacks small businesses that create 80% of the jobs. We need to protect jobs like those of Bombardier through cooperation and less finger pointing. Real progress to open up the Ring of Fire requires a new level of collaboration with the province,
Your time's up, Frank.
Indigenous leaders, First Nation, and municipalities, and I will do that. Thank you.
We're going to move on to Anna Betty. You have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anna Betty Achnibadeshkam, and I'm proud to sit before you as the NDP candidate for Thunder Bay Superior North. I am originally from a small community on the Albany River that's called Martin Falls First Nation. I have been a resident of Thunder Bay for the last 33 years. I have raised my family here, and I have made great efforts to contribute to the well-being and to the safety of our community, which includes promoting the well-being of our children and safety for all citizens, no matter what ethnic group that we are in, because we are all residents of this city and of this region. I've had the honor of traveling to the communities and to the municipalities within our region, and there's always one thing that is common, and that is affordability of to survive.
And that's your time, Anna Betty. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to Youssef.
Hi, my name is Youssef Kanjori with the People's Party of Canada. I'm a fourth-year student. Some of you may know me. I joined the People's Party of Canada because I think we can all agree that we've reached a crisis point in Canada. There's many amenities and things that we've come to enjoy that are becoming increasingly expensive, increasingly untenable. The job market in northwestern Ontario is completely drying up as people move out of the area. And I joined the People's Party because I feel that we're going to start attacking the actual causes of problems instead of putting Band-Aids on solutions. And so I'd like to focus on making life more affordable for all Canadians, as well as bringing back the jobs that have been slowly moving out of this region. So I'm Youssef Kanjori for the People's Party of Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Youssef. We'll move on to Patty.
Thank you, Charlotte. In 2015, I was elected to bring change, and for too long, we have been left out of control. Since then, I've been able to put our region on the map, and we've seen investments that are focused on making sure that everyone has a fair chance to succeed. Strong communities depend on decent work, affordable housing, and access to training.
You got shut off. There you go.
Children that grow up free of poverty become the employers, entrepreneurs, and great innovators of the future. But it's not enough to simply have a job. People need to have a reason to live in the North and stay in the North. That's why investments in schools, culture, seniors, recreation, and housing matter so much. And that's why a conservative vision of cuts and austerity is especially harmful to the north. From Manitouwadge to Gull Bay, Greenstone to Marathon, Beatagong to Rocky Bay, I've traveled every mile of this riding. And everywhere I go, I meet determined, positive people fighting for the north. We can't cut our way to prosperity. We have a strong and realistic plan to protect our environment, grow our economy, and strengthen the middle class. Together, let's choose forward.
Thank you, Patty. And now to Alexander, please.
My name's Alex Vauden. I work for a small mining contractor called Manrock Developments. First off, I'd like to add my most sincere appreciation for everyone who took time from their busy schedules to be here today. I believe this nation is at a defining point. We still have Canadians in the Middle East. We are still fighting unemployment and watching Canadian corporations and companies take their business elsewhere. We are fighting to keep a struggling healthcare system afloat and battling an ever-changing climate. It is times like these where we have to ask ourselves, is this a matter of left or right, conservative or liberal? For me, it's simple. It's a matter of forwards or back. Do we continue down an unsustainable path, or do we march forward to blaze a bright new trail for our nation and the great constituency of the North Shore? I hope I can be the one to help the North reach its full potential.
Thank you, Alexander. And our final opening statement from Bruce. Please begin your 1 minute.
I'm a biologist and forester. I was a high school science department chair, university professor in land use and park planning, an Ontario environmental judge, and entrepreneur with 3 corporations and 8 wilderness lodges. I know how to balance a budget. As your MP for 7 years, I worked across party lines to get things done. 6 out of 7 years, more federal dollars came to Thunder Bay Superior North than any Northern Ontario riding. I helped to write the Green Party platform, 90 pages of online addressing everything from the climate crisis to the housing policy, and it's fully costed. Unlike most MPs, I am not interested in being merely a customer sales rep for my party in Thunder Bay. There's important work to be done for you in Parliament. I have a proven record of putting you ahead of any party, and I will get things done for Northwestern Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. So we will now begin with our questions. And the first question is to Frank Puglia and will be asked by Bonnie from the Lakehead Social Planning Council.
Basic income pilot projects, including the one in Thunder Bay, have demonstrated that the income security provided by a basic income reduces poverty and increases the social determinants of health for people. When the provincial government terminated the pilot, the impacts on local participants were profound. The participants were hoping to break the cycle of poverty, enhance employment opportunities, stabilize housing, eat healthier, and improve their physical health. Would your party support a universal guaranteed minimum income in Canada for all Canadians? And if so, how?
Frank?
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Basic Income Pilot Project. I support it when it was first introduced as a great way to stabilize the lives of those who need that kind of help so they can go back to school, they can become productive members of society by not having to worry about the cyclical nature of getting a job, especially if they're not have the basic to get ahead. Some people went back to school and they were ready to graduate when the program was canceled. I think that was wrong. They should have at least waited for that program to be completed to see if it works, if it doesn't. I believe that it does work. And I would support that and bring it forward to the Conservative Party to make sure that we can do our part in supporting the people that need our help, especially through a basic income program.
Thank you. And the same question to Anna Betty. You have 1 minute. It's on. It should be on.
Thank you for that question. I believe that particular pilot project was very beneficial and created some hope for certain individuals, not only in this city, but other parts of this province. And it represented a stepping stone and provided income for those that were, at a stage in their life where they were struggling, and they needed that extra assistance. And we need to create those opportunities for individuals to return to school or to provide some other type of on-the-job training and other life skills. And our NDP will, we have always fought for the people, and we will make sure that we provide an income source so that we can.
Thank you. That is your time. Thanks, Anne and Betty. Next, the question to you, Seth.
Hi, thanks for the question. I find that the interesting part of the pilot program wasn't the good it did, but more of exposing the bad that's in our system. The fact that currently in Canada we have such a problem where if you start out with simply $0, you can't move anywhere. You need to have something in order to start with something. It's incredibly troubling that we've got to this point that the poorest Canadians can't even get anywhere in making a living. I think it's a good thing to point out that the People's Party is currently the only party who is completely mandated to eliminating all taxes on the poor, because I think that simply taxing the poor when they're in the state that they're already in and with the system that is already set up is simply untenable. And thank you.
Thank you, Youssef. Patty.
Thank you very much. Listen, this government's been working extensively on poverty, whether it's raising Canada Child Benefit rates to the point where we've lifted 300,000 children out of poverty, whether it's a $55 billion national housing strategy, whether it's an actual poverty strategy that's reaching targets 3 years ahead of time, whether it's ensuring that people have access to skills training in equitable ways all across the country. This government has been focused on making sure everyone has a fair chance to succeed. Basic income already exists in all of the provinces. It's called social assistance, it's called ODSP, and I would definitely advocate that we would activate together to work against cuts that the Ford government has been inflicting on some of the most vulnerable in the province. This is happening across the system in provincial governments, where cuts to ODSP, cuts to OW, cuts to living wages, cuts to minimum wage are affecting people's ability to actually elevate themselves out of poverty.
Thank you, Patty. Alex?
Thank you for the question first. And on the topic of basic incomes, I do believe in a basic income. I do not believe that in the next 4 years we will be able to put up a basic income. In my personal opinion, a basic income is something that all people get, regardless of their financial situation. It is money for everybody. With the future and automation coming up on us quickly, I believe that soon we'll be able to tax these automations, and then we'll be able to have a basic income. But as for the next 4 years, I do not believe a basic income is feasible. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And Bruce, your thoughts on this question?
The Green Party does believe in a guaranteed livable income. It's in our platform. Google it. If we can afford $13 billion for a pipeline to export raw crude dilbit to China, to export jobs and pollution, we can afford one of the wealthiest countries in the entire world to make sure every person has the rights to life. Sweden has an expression, all of Sweden must live, and what they mean is that every person in Sweden has the same opportunities, the same ability to be healthy, happy, well-fed, well-clothed. We can do it here. The root cause of addictions, of crime, of health, both physical and mental problems, is basically poverty. We must do something about it. We have gaps in income, which are getting closer and closer to those in the U.S. It's absolutely unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And so now, Frank, you have 30 seconds to make any final points to that question. 30 seconds, Frank.
Hello, is it on? Yeah. Okay. When the basic income was taken away, there was a group of people that went to my Liberal opponent office and asked if the federal government would help, but the answer was no. We can I support because we can reduce other programs because they can collapse into one, reduce bureaucracy through collaboration with the province. I met the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction last week. I will work with him to bring those positive results to Thunder Bay.
Thank you, Frank. And that completes the first question. Thanks, everybody. A round of applause, guys. You're so quiet. So our next question is from Jason. Jason, and it will be starting with Anna Betty. So Jason, your question.
Miigwech, I just want to first begin by acknowledging the site of our event here today in the traditional territory of Fort William First Nation and the Indigenous people of Robinson Superior Treaty. My question for the candidates are, what is your party's position on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and the plan to harmonize it with Canadian legislation?
Thank you, Jason. And Anna Betty, you have the first 1 minute response.
Thank you very much, Jason, for that question, and also to an acknowledgement to the Anishinaabe people of Fort William First Nation. As you know, as many of you know, it was our NDP Member of Parliament, Romeo Shaganash, who had pushed for UNDRIP to become legislation within this country. And we are one of the very last few countries to acknowledge that particular declaration. And the NDP will be very firm to making this a priority. And it's very essential in terms of reconciliation and ensuring that each of our citizens, no matter who they are treated fairly.
Thank you, Anna Betty. Youssef, you're up next. 1 minute, please.
Thank you for the question. So, for the People's Party stance on this, we need to start looking at opening up the old laws that were in the past founded by openly racist people. We are looking at a more respected, more free, and much more fair treatment of Indigenous people in Canada. And we have to really get rid of the stains and problems in the past that our government has inflicted on them with no cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Youssef. Patty?
Well, thank you. Absolutely. The Prime Minister is committed to implementing UNDRIP in its fullest form. And as a matter of fact, yes, MP Saganash introduced the legislation and our government supported it and got it through the House of Commons, where it sat in the Senate and was killed by Conservative senators who refused to move it forward, and it died because the House rose. That's the story of UNDRIP. And so for my Conservative candidate to say whatever he thinks he feels about Indigenous people or about universal basic income actually negates the behavior of his party. In fact, the Conservative Party has stood in the way and voted against every single measure that we have put forward to improve the lives of Indigenous peoples, to work more collaboratively with Indigenous peoples, and to resource share with Indigenous peoples. And that's the way forward, quite frankly. We cannot move this country forward if not all of us are moving together. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Alexander?
Thank you for the question again. And Canada has a history of failed assimilation and just all-around poor treatment of its Indigenous people. We here at the Libertarian Party, and absolutely to answer the question, we would definitely follow those recommendations. But we'd like to go a step farther and give them similar jurisdictions and powers similar to that of our provincial governments. We would like to really enforce the sovereignty of the treaty lands and continue forward as them making their own decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And Bruce?
UNDRIP is in the Green Party platform. We support it, and we have for very many years, not recently. I'm an immigrant. Most of the people in this room are immigrants or the descendants of immigrants. The First Nations people welcomed us into this land to share it with them, and we have not shared adequately or fairly. The other thing I'd like to say, I've said it before, I'd like to say it again. It's not just a matter of treaty rights, and it's very much a matter of human rights, but it's also a matter of practicality and self-interest for our region. If First Nations people do well, we are all going to do well. If First Nation people do not do well, none of us is going to do well. We all have to paddle this canoe together in the same direction in rhythm and cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And Frank, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. The Liberals said they will adopt it, but nothing has happened for the last 4 years, other than setting up some committees to review it. But let's talk about the dismissive attitude that Trudeau has shown towards the Indigenous people, especially a community activist for Grass and Arrows, when she asked what would it take to get help from the current government. And he said, thank you for your donation. Everybody has seen that on TV, has made the rounds. So we should be careful when we point the finger at others, because the Conservative Party, and especially myself, have always worked with Indigenous people to bring practical solutions to their lives for safe water, for economic opportunity, because reconciliation does not just, we don't just talk about it, we act on it and make it happen through positive results. I just came back from the Wabakwe Supply Road project of Victoria Inn, and we talked about this. And respect the rights to say yes is also important to make that economic reconciliation happen.
Thank you, Frank. And Anna Betty, you have 30 seconds if you would like to say anything further on this topic. It's on, yeah, we're just leaving it on.
Okay, thank you very much. The only statement I would like to say at this time is that if the Liberal government had been very serious about building the relationship and including supporting UNDRIP, they would have also not appealed the case of the Caring Society under Dr. Cindy Blackstock, and that in itself is a statement of not being fair to Indigenous people.
Thank you, Anna Betty. So I just want to remind the folks in the audience, if you could please turn your ringers off on your cell phones, that would be much appreciated. And also to the candidates, make sure that you're speaking into the mic throughout the entire response to the question so we can hear everything you have to say. Now moving on to Charles from the Food Strategy for your question, which will be starting with a response from Youssef. So Charles?
Right. So changes in our climate impact the most vulnerable communities in Canada and beyond, and especially First Nations communities. They are having a serious impact on our food systems, our agriculture, fisheries, forests, and freshwater foods. Currently, discussions and actions about flooding, drought, fires across our region have not adequately tied the climate emergency to these issues, and little is being done at any level of government to address these issues. How will your party plan to address the climate emergency, and especially the negative impact that's having on our food systems that will impact the most vulnerable people in our community?
Thank you. Youssef, you have 1 minute.
So on the climate emergency, there is a bit of a misnomer that the climate emergency is purely a carbon-based problem, and as such, the government has sought to put a Band-Aid on it by creating more taxes on the people more in the name of a carbon tax. But when you look at the actual problems, it's not carbon in the air, it's mercury in the water, it's methane coming out from fracking, it's all sorts of other problems. There's plastic in the water, coming from places like India and China, which are completely unrestricted. There are so many problems that aren't being addressed, and I find that often the government is acting as if they're making plans for it, but merely they're just making excuses for more taxes. So as the People's Party, we need to start addressing actual infringements on our environment. We need to start addressing other countries who are infringing on our environment as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Youssef. Patty.
Well, thank you. Listen, our party knows that climate change is real. We also believe scientists that say that carbon emissions are a clear reason why climate change is real. We have a comprehensive plan to protect the climate. We've been investing in clean technology, supporting the transition for transportation and all of the other ways that we use energy. We've invested in public transit. We've put a price on pollution with a rebate for Canadians so that the transition to a clean economy is affordable. We're the only party that has a real and affordable plan, a practical plan, and the next steps is to get to net zero by 2050 with legislated targets, ensuring that people have the supports to help transition their families, their houses, their vehicles. And by the way, we're 75% of the way to reaching our Paris target. So we've done a lot in 4 years, and we've had a lot of accomplishments that we need to build on and continue on.
Thank you very much. Alex?
We believe that with the right free market system, it matters like the environment. Canadians are naturally benevolent. We're good people. We're all great people. And we believe that we will push corporations to providing greener solutions by allowing them to act more freely. For instance, we look at electric cars, right? If everyone here was not financially hindered, I'm sure there would be plenty of electric car buyers. But the fact of the matter is, it's outside of the normal price scope of the average Canadian.
Thank you very much. And Bruce?
We definitely have a climate change emergency. We Canadians are #1 in the world per capita for production of greenhouse gases. We need to show leadership. I introduced and passed the only climate change bill ever passed in the House of Commons in 2012. If Harper had not killed it in the Senate, we would next year have had a 25% reduction in greenhouse gases instead of the increase that we've seen under the Liberals. Trudeau and the Liberals have been climate hypocrites, voting to declare a climate emergency one day and the very next day buying a pipeline to export raw crude and jobs to communist China. They have rubber-stamped Harper's inadequate targets and haven't even met those. The only way the Liberals will ever keep their promises on almost anything is if we have a minority government with lots of NDP and Green MPs to keep them honest.
Thank you, Bruce. Frank?
Yes, the question was food strategy within the context of climate emergency. And the agricultural sector is one of the largest employer in our region, 1,700 people. We need to support it, including the local food supply, especially for First Nation remote communities. And our plan in protecting the environment has 3 components: green technology, no taxes. Companies were required to invest in emissions-reducing technology. A cleaner, greener, natural environment that comes into play with your question, protecting our fisheries, forests, agricultural lands, tourist areas, and millions of good jobs in this industry, including First Nation communities, and taking the climate change globally to reduce global emissions while we create green tech jobs in the region. Thank you for that question because it was...
Thank you, Frank. Anna Betty?
Thank you very much. First of all, I know how it is. I have lived in a remote community, and I realize the cost of living and also the cost of heating our homes. And the NDP is very aware of this, and we would ensure that we move forward on providing energy efficient for our homes and infrastructure within our Indigenous communities and other municipalities that also require this, and providing funding for farming and other agricultural initiatives, and also for recycling. Like, we need to support those processes within all throughout the province, and we also need to.
Thank you, Anna Betty. Thank you. Youssef, you now have 30 seconds to make a few final comments on this question.
Okay, thank you. So, as I was saying, with everyone's talking about just more emission caps, more taxes on everything, we need to start addressing the fact that the average person can't afford these expensive things. We need to start making these things more affordable. We need to start focusing on actually going after the people who are causing these problems, and we need to start addressing the real problems: mercury, methane, other poisons in the waters, plastics, instead of just pretending it's carbon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Youssef, and thank you all for your responses to that question. We'll now move on to our next question from Nathan at the Chamber of Commerce, and the first response will be to Patty. Nathan.
Countries around the world have recognized the rail industry as a strategic one. While highly competitive and globalized jurisdictions throughout Europe and Asia foster and promote their rail champions through various mechanisms, such as local content and innovative procurement frameworks, in Canada, we seem to be bucking an international trend, as recent and major rail projects have been outsourced to the US, India, and China, using our tax dollars to create jobs and expertise elsewhere. How will your party ensure a strong rail transportation industry in Canada, and how will it use existing tools at its disposal, such as local content requirements, to create jobs at home and provide the best value for our tax dollars?
Thank you. Patty?
Well, thank you, Nathan, and I think your question is getting at the question of what's happening in Bombardier. Listen, we either are going to be a trading nation and have agreements with the United States, which, by the way, we sell 70% of our goods to, with Asia, with Europe. In fact, we're the only G7 country that has trading agreements with all other 7 countries in the G7. Those are important things. They allow us to grow our exports. They allow us to grow our businesses. They allow us to export our goods. And so part of those trade agreements are content agreements. Of course, at the provincial level, there is no limit to how much a province can demand is created locally. And that's why we encourage the province of Ontario and Doug Ford to get back to work. Because in fact, they could set as high as 100% Ontario content requirements if they wished. They could also have a plan for transit. They could also figure out who's going to run transit. Is it the province of Ontario or is it the city of Toronto? And so I'll continue to advocate to make sure that those jobs stay here, but I will also ensure that we have a strong trading agreements with international partners so that all of our businesses can grow.
Thank you, Patty. Alex?
On the topic of Bombardier, the Libertarian government would not support any industry that requires corporate welfare. And Bombardier has not, well, this year they turned a profit, so maybe they will survive this. But for 5 years before that, they have not turned a profit. Via Rail is the same thing. Unfortunately, rail in Canada does not seem to be doing very well. And it's as simple as that. I mean, if it's not economically viable, it's not economically viable. We shouldn't be dumping money into dead ends. Bruce.
Thank you, Alex. Bruce?
I think many of you know that I've been a rail champion for long over a decade. If you go to brucehired.ca, I have a very long report on how to restore Via Rail to the North Shore and through Thunder Bay. We need to invest both locally and long distance. We need to invest in local transit, and we believe, and eventually we need to have free local transit everywhere in Canada. We need long distance rail between regions and between provinces, and we must restore Via Rail. And we can build all those cars right here in Thunder Bay with Bombardier. We need the federal and provincial governments to stop finger pointing about whose fault it is. It's the province's fault. It is the Liberals' fault. It is the Conservatives' fault. And it's somewhat Bombardier management's fault. But it's not the workers' fault. So we need to invest in those cars here in Thunder Bay and create the jobs of the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank? Frank?
Thank you. We need to protect jobs, retain those jobs like Bombardier, good paying jobs, because if losing those will be detrimental to our region. The Liberal attacks to the provincial government to shore up their political fortunes are going to be causing major problem for the future. There are $23.5 billion of rail infrastructure already allocated in the GTA for the next 13 years. In collaboration between the federal and the provincial government, we need to sit at the table and make sure that we not only increase the local Canadian content to compete with the Americans, but be able to bring those jobs here. I will make that a priority. And by the way, it was the Liberal government under the Liberal watch that we lost $1 billion contract to Siemens in California. And nothing was said, nothing was done. It's under their watch. And that speaks for itself.
Thank you, Frank. Anna Betty?
Thank you very much for that question. First of all, I believe that that the railways that we have out in our region are an opportunity for transportation and to address some of the issues that you've that we spoke about here today, including climate, and it also is will provide jobs. I met with the employees at Bombardier, and I was quite empathetic to their concerns. And why is it that our people here in this city, they have the skills, there's infrastructure there, so why aren't they the ones building the trains? Thank you.
Thank you. Youssef.
Thank you for the question. I think it's, again, it's going to be a trend of me saying this. We need to start focusing on why the jobs are leaving in the first place. Why is it that America is starting to outcompete us? Why is it that companies are needing all this corporate welfare and then not being held to account? It has simply become untenable to do business in Canada. Under the Liberals, even last year, we had an increase for Canadian-owned businesses, not for international businesses, oddly, though, but for Canadian-owned businesses, they had a tax increase in 2019. It's become increasingly difficult for companies to turn a profit now, and with all of that, they're starting to now ask for welfare from the government. The People's Party is going to start holding people accountable exactly like with Bombardier, where they asked for money to not lay people off, and then they laid people off anyway, so that it was an abject failure. We need to start looking at reducing the cost of business in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Youssef. And Patty, you have 30 seconds for any further comments on this question about a rail strategy.
Well, thank you. The Liberal government put forward a $180 billion infrastructure program over the next 10 years to create jobs, to create the infrastructure that we need, to help provinces and territories and municipalities build the infrastructure of today and tomorrow. And what we see is a province of Ontario dragging their heels and leaving billions of dollars on the table to make a political point. That's not good for the province, that's not good for the community, and that is not good for workers.
Thank you very much. And so I think it's going to be our final question before closing statements will be from Bonnie, and the first response will be from Alex. Bonnie, your question.
Thanks. An estimated 235,000 different Canadians will experience homelessness this year at an estimated economic cost of $7 billion per year. In Thunder Bay, based on the 2018 enumeration of homeless individuals, it was reported that at least 474 people were experiencing homelessness. And we know this is a gross undercount. The District of Thunder Bay Social Services Administration Board first quarter operational report shows that emergency shelter use for the chronically homeless individuals in Thunder Bay has been at capacity, sometimes even double for the past 3 years. What would your party do to expedite the process to end homelessness based on its critical nature and epidemic numbers in some cities like Thunder Bay and the staggering numbers associated with chronic homelessness?
Thank you. Alex.
So that's a really good question. The Thunder Bay has some of the most affordable housing in Canada. So to me, the question isn't so much homelessness as it is inability to purchase homes. This can be tied to a lot of things, but I think in homelessness, it largely, and not completely, but largely is due to substance abuse. Now, the Liberals put forward a lot of great programs to help with substance abuse, but it doesn't address the issue, and that is that these people, these victims, and that's what they are victims of substance abuse, are still being prosecuted as criminals. Now, why, if you are a victim and you are made to be a criminal, why would you turn to the government that has made you a criminal for help?
Thank you, Alex. Bruce?
Homelessness is a large and a growing problem. It doesn't have to be. To reiterate, the Green Party believes in a guaranteed livable income that will help a lot. The federal government needs to invest in low-cost housing again. They need a housing strategy again. We need to change our banking system so that everyone has access to affordable capital spending like mortgages for housing. We need to increase the amortization period back up to 30 years again, and we need to have subsidies, help for first-time home buyers with low incomes guaranteed by the federal government. And the last thing I'd like to mention is we need, as we did in the 70s, to reinvest in co-op housing. Castle Green Housing Co-op is a great example of what we did well and we should do again. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Frank?
Given that the problem still persists, one has to ask why. After 4 years of Liberals in government, this issue has not been resolved, or at least attempted to be resolved. Whatever has been put forward is not working, because one is a complex issue that needs to go to the social determinants of health. And Medicine Hat was able to almost eliminate homelessness through the collaboration of the federal, provincial, municipal government. If our federal government continues to attack the provinces, would you think they're going to sit at the table and collaborate when they're the ones who are pointing the finger instead of looking for solutions? It requires that kind of approach. And also we need to bring everybody, the federal, provincial, municipal, and indigenous leaders and communities at the table to find suitable solutions. Collaboration is going to be key, and I look forward to be able, if elected, to go and move in that direction.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Anna?
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, we have to look at the issues as to why those individuals may be homeless. And there's a lot of reasons. It's not just addictions. You know, there is in this country there is a lack of affordable housing, and so the NDP would ensure that we would support processes such as the co-op housing industry, Habitat for Humanity, and also to ensure that we invest more into resources for our youth who are aging out of the child welfare system, because they say that 3 out of 5 under the age of 25 of those that are homeless are children that are youth that are aging out of the child welfare system. So, you know, we need to ensure that we invest more into providing services for them. And we need to invest more into our shelters to, you know, build those skills so that people transition.
Thank you so much, Anna. Youssef?
Hopefully I can get everything I want to talk about here. One of my best friends spent most of his life homeless, so I find it incredibly absurd that the idea that it's substance abuse to blame for the massive homelessness problem that we've been seeing under the last couple years. Under both governments, we've seen an increase in homelessness, not decrease. It is becoming completely untenable now. As students, they can't afford their first house, and not just it's at all levels of the income market. People are finding that they can't sell their houses. People find that they can't buy them. We have to start addressing these problems. It's at all spectrums of the market. We need to start putting money back into the nonprofits who go out and address these problems. We need to start focusing on the costs that are coming in for first-time buyers, and we need to start supporting people who don't have anything so that they can get off their feet and start off with. Thank you.
Thank you. Patty?
Well, thank you. After a decade of Harper ignoring some of the most vulnerable people in our community, we finally have a national housing strategy and right to housing legislation and $55 billion to fund it. We have partnerships with the provinces. We have co-investment funds that go directly to municipalities and organizations. Anyone who wants to apply to build housing can actually do so directly with the federal government. That's why the Salvation Army got $3 million for their transitional housing, because they applied. Our office assisted to make sure that their application was successful. We renewed the co-ops for Superior View and Castle Green Co-op. We have provided support to maintain the affordable units that we have in our system, like the units that are affordable through the DSAB. And finally, in 2020, we will have a portable housing benefit that people can take with them so they have more choice in where they live. Thank you.
And Alex, would you like 30 seconds for any further comments on that topic? You're good? Okay. Hey, I like that. No, you can't. So that concludes our questions. So we will now move to the closing statements, and there will be 1 minute for each candidate to make a closing statement, and we'll start in reverse order. So Bruce, you can have your first minute, please.
When I was your MP here for 7 years, I introduced more bills and motions, 30 of them, than all the previous MPs from this riding ever, including Patty. I created the Lake Superior National Marine Conservation Area along with $21 million to fund it. I unlocked your cell phones. I passed my Climate Change Accountability Act in a minority government, and a minority is coming again. Parties are not mentioned anywhere in our Constitution. But in 1970, Pierre Trudeau amended the Elections Act to put party names onto the ballot. In the fine print, it said that candidates can't run unless the leader signs their nomination papers. Instantly, Pierre had his MPs under his thumb and soon called his own Liberal MPs mere trained seals. The Green Party is the only party that does not whip their MPs. If elected, I will put you ahead of any party.
Thank you, Bruce. Alex, you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Again, I'd like to thank everyone for allowing me to be here, as well as thank our panelists and our moderator for their time tonight. Looking at global trends, I think we all know Canada and the world has some tough times ahead of it. The continued inability to provide a free market where businesses can grow and flourish without government bias will cause irreparable damage to our economy and our nation. That's why the biggest risk we can take right now is to adopt the same tired policies and the same failed politics that have misrepresented Canadian interests for years. It is time to choose a path. It is time to choose forward, and it is time to choose prosperity for the North Shore. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alex. I agree. It is time to choose forward. And over the Listen, over the past 4 years as Member of Parliament and Cabinet Minister, I've worked hard to deliver on the things that you told me 4 years ago would make our region and our country stronger. And all across the region, I've delivered success for our communities, whether it's water treatment or housing, support for economic development. I've worked hard to ensure that our region gets the attention and the investments that we deserve. And we now have a Northern Ontario growth strategy with a $50 million boost for FedNor. And we've funded big projects like Watay Power and the East-West Tie that will help our region grow even more. Our government's smart investments have led to the lowest unemployment rate across Canada in 40 years, even here. Small businesses have a lower tax rate, stimulating our increasingly diverse economy. We've doubled down on affordable education, funding Lakehead and Confederation College. Listen, during the Harper years, Northern Ontario wasn't even on the map. But the Prime Minister has visited Thunder Bay 4 times over the past years. Returning to austerity and cuts won't grow our economy. Only choosing forward will.
Thank you. Youssef?
There's been a lot of finger pointing back and forth currently through the debate. A lot of people have forgotten that they were in power during that time, so I don't know what they're talking about. There's been a lot of talk about putting more money into different things, and people need to start looking and questioning at why these problems have suddenly become such a big issue in the first place due to mismanagement in previous years. We need to start going after the actual causes of problems to start eliminating them. We need to start looking at making life more affordable for every single Canadian, especially in Northwestern Ontario, because that's one of the things I hear most of all, that life has simply become unaffordable, it's untenable. And we need to start focusing on Canada First policies. We need to argue better with Trump. We need to argue better with the UN. We need to argue better with China. So we need to start putting Canada first. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna Betty.
First of all, thank each and every one of you for being here this evening. And it wasn't too long ago where I was sitting where you are now, and I know that you are here because you care about your families and about your future, and so do I, and that is why I'm sitting here. So I want to thank each and every one of you, and you know, as I represent integrity, I represent hard work. Like, I worked really hard to get a lot of things done, not only for my family, but with any initiative that I was working on. And, you know, I truly believe in the platform of the NDP, and we're the only party that has our Northern platform, because we know and recognize that in the North, we have specific and unique needs. And you know, I would rather see the billions of dollars that have been distributed to large corporations like here to sustain our economy.
Thank you, Anna Betty.
And thank you very much.
Frank.
I'm running to champion the people of Thunder Bay Superior North so that they can get ahead, not just get by. Making life more affordable is one of the first priorities. By a universal tax cut that will give back about $800 per couple, tax-free parental leave to help young families, up to $3,800 in tax credits for making your home more energy efficient, eliminating the carbon tax to reduce your cost of living because there are better ways to protect the environment, and in tax-free home heating. We'll create jobs by investing in workforce training and development, and economic diversification by investing and nurturing in a technology North cluster, local solution to our local needs, and made in the North job creation solution. We'll protect the environment by green technology and not taxes, a cleaner, greener, natural environment, and taking the climate change globally because we can help. We have the know-how, the technology to help the world reduce greenhouse emissions. We need safer communities. I'm up.
You're
Health
up.
and social program.
Thank you, Frank. So that went quick, and that concludes the Thunder Bay Superior North Candidates Forum. Please give your candidates a round of applause for a great job tonight. So we will now take a short break to set up for the Thunder Bay Rainy River debate. I'll ask all those candidates to come forward, and we'll get started with that in a few moments. Thank you. James, are we good to go? Okay. If I could get everyone to find their seats, please. We are now resuming the debate for the Thunder Bay Rainy River candidates. Please take your seats and close your mouths. Which one? Okay, welcome back to the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum. For those of you who are just joining us, my name is Charlotte Robinson and I'm the president of the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce. Thanks to our media partner Net News Ledger for live webcasting tonight, and it will also be available later for viewing after the event. If you're using social media, please use the hashtag TBayDebate. A brief reminder of the format: the order of speaking has been determined by a draw, and questions will rotate from the stage left to the right. The questions will be posed by the panelists, and each candidate will have 60 seconds for their answer, with the receiving candidate having 30 seconds for rebuttal. The candidates will only be able to speak within the allotted time, and we do have notice cards that will be shown when 10 seconds remain, and we will cut you off when the time runs out. I remind candidates that they have pledged to be respectful, to not engage in name-calling, and to not interrupt each other when speaking, and of course to use proper language and follow the direction of the moderator. And the audience is asked to remain quiet while the candidates are speaking, but we do encourage you to please applaud after each candidate's response. Our panelists are Bonnie Chrysotoway from the Lakehead Social Planning Council, Jason Racevich from the Anishinaabe Business Professionals Association, Dr. Charles Levko from the Canada Research Chair in Sustainable Food Systems, and Nathan Lawrence from the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce. So we'll now begin the forum with the candidates for Thunder Bay Rainy River, and we will start with 1-minute opening statements, beginning with Andrew. Andrew.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. My name is Andrew Hartnell. I'm the People's Party of Canada candidate for Thunder Bay Rainy River. I was born and raised in Rainy River, but I'm no stranger to Thunder Bay. I've lived here off and on for over 10 years, went to college and worked and things like that. The reason why I wanted to get into federal politics is just because I'm a small town councillor, and I was just sick and tired of the same old back and forth politics. And when this party came up, I just, everything made sense to me, getting rid of corporate welfare and working on Canada first and, focusing on our country. And right now, I think that's kind of what we need to do. So, like I said, I was born and raised in Rainy River. I do have a disability, so that does give me some disadvantages, but yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up is Marcus. Please proceed.
Good evening. In this debate, we have 1 minute to answer questions. To answer complex questions with simple answers is a bit of an art, and I probably, as of yet, have not mastered that art. I'm from originally East Brock Street, then Kaministiquia. I'm a doctor in the emergency room. I also have a law degree and a few other advanced degrees in health law and policy. I worked several years in developing countries. I worked writing health legislation for World Health Organization. I'm pleased to be before you tonight, and I look forward to the debate.
Thank you, Marcus. Amanda.
Thank you. My name's Amanda Mata-John, and I'm a blue-collar green. I worked my way through my education and across the entire country. I did this after sustaining an injury in the military, and I did this while raising my daughter. I know the realities of the working poor and the middle class because I have worked that slow climb, and I did a solid job of it. You can see this through my record for environmental compliance, waste management, and policy development. Thunder Bay is my home, and I am extremely passionate about effective, honest, ethical government and long-term sustainable jobs. Jobs that will be created while we transition to a green economy. In this riding, in this election, we will make history as we elect our first female MP. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Yuksem.
Thank you. My name is Yuksam Wan, and I'm the NDP candidate for Thunder Bay Rainy River. Born in Hearst, Ontario, I was raised working in a family-owned restaurant. I saw firsthand the hard work and dedication it takes to have a successful business. As a labor litigator and a professor at Confederation College in the HR program, I am ensuring that the next generation of business professionals have the skills and knowledge to succeed. People are working harder than ever, but still feel like it's impossible to get ahead. The NDP has a plan to create good jobs and make life more affordable for all, while building safe, vibrant communities where we can raise our families and where businesses can thrive. The business community in Thunder Bay has identified some key barriers for our region, including social issues such as homelessness, addictions, and mental health. These issues impact our community as a whole, and the NDP will support better public services that all Canadians can rely on.
Thank you. And Linda?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linda Ridholm. My love for the region and people of Northwestern Ontario has inspired me in many ways of 27 years of elected service. I was a national board director on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, a municipal councillor here in the city of Thunder Bay, and a school trustee with Lakehead Public Schools. Much time, energy, and ability were devoted to 27 years of elected public service. I have served because I care. It is October 2019. Voters should choose a positive conservative government. Choose financial management and economic development, community safety, increased health and social transfer money, a real environmental plan, fair immigration process, and good ethics. Please vote Linda Ridholm.
So the first question will be from Jason from the Anishinaabe Business Professionals Association, and the first response will be from Andrew. So Jason, your question, please.
Okay, thank you. Clean drinking water is a right, and many First Nations across the region don't have access to such an essential part of life. Please provide an overview of your party's platform on what it is doing to ending First Nation water advisories.
Thanks for that question. That's actually one of our big parts for our platform. We do have an Indigenous platform for our party. One way we need to end boil water advisories is, one way we can do that is we need to end the corporate welfare in this country, because we can take that money that's given to big rich corporations that they hand out all the time and give them, into our actual country and work on our people first. We need to, it's a crime that in this day and age we even have boil water advisories in this country. I understand it takes time, it takes money, it takes a lot of stuff, but it can eventually get done, and that's part of our platform, is to get rid of boil water advisories and working with the communities and basically working with them and giving some more responsibilities to the reserves and helping them succeed and helping them, get out of poverty and get rid of the boil water advisories.
Thank you, Andrew. Marcus?
Thanks. I love this question. I work for World Health Organization writing water quality legislation in Laos. The Liberals have really addressed this problem. They've put $6 billion into treatment of wastewater and providing adequate drinking water for First Nation communities. When they first came into power, there was 105 long-term water advisories in effect. They've eliminated 87 of those as of now. There are still some, but they've committed themselves to eliminate the remaining ones, I think, by 2020, 2022. However, we certainly believe that there is a right to water. It's a socioeconomic and cultural right. And certainly we will, as a party, do our best. We've already started addressing this issue, and we will continue to address this issue, and we won't stop until all the water advisories are over.
Thank you, Marcus. Amanda?
Thank you very much. I think the first thing that we really need to do is uphold Canada's fiduciary responsibility and fulfill Canada's responsibilities in agreements, honor treaties, and respect all rights of Indigenous people, including their inherent right to self-governance. With that as well, we're going to include representatives from First Nations, Métis, and Inuit governments on the Council of Canadian Governments to improve policy coherence and optimize public spending with respect to other orders of policy. So what that means is, I'm not going to sit here and tell you how we're going to clean First Nations drinking water. I'm going to tell you that we're going to work with those communities so this problem can actually be satisfied. This has been going on for far too long, and there's far too many people that are without drinking water. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been to Big Island. I've been to Big Grassy. There are still boil water advisories in our riding, and that to me is a shame. It has been going on for too long, and even over the 4 years that we've seen under the Liberal government, there are still too many that are not being addressed. They are on wait lists. They are being told, yes, it's coming, and that's not good enough. The NDP has committed to spending and investing the amount of money that is needed to address that issue immediately, because 2022 is too long to wait for somebody to be able to turn on the tap and have water to drink, to cook, and to bathe. This is 2019, and we need to address it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda?
Clean water is an essential element of life, and it's good that a start has been made for these First Nation communities. The Conservative Party of Canada has committed to continuing with that process, making it a collaborative process, making it work for each individual community, whatever deems the best way for them. Personally, as a city councillor, I made sure that we provided city water along East Mountain Road because Fort William needed clean drinking water, safe water, good tasting water on East Mountain Road 20 years ago. And I made sure that we had the city engineer out there. We had meetings. We then provided a water line for both sides of that road, both the reserve side and the city side. So personally, I'm certainly on board, and so is the Conservative Party. Thank you.
You get 30 seconds for rebuttal if there's anything further you want to respond on that question.
I just want to add, just like I said, I know we're a new party. I know we're just getting out there, and we might not have the good or bad press, whatever it is out there. But I think there is a need for a change because, like I said, with being a year-old party with 40,000 members and almost every candidate in every riding, I think people are needing a change, and I think that change is the People's Party.
Thank you. And so that is the end of that first question. We'll now move to Dr. Charles, who will pose the next question, and it will be starting with a response by Marcus. So, Charles?
Great. So health, equity, and environmental sustainability are deeply interconnected. Our new Canadian Food Guide demonstrates that our nutritional needs in addition to meeting our nutritional needs, our food needs to be culturally appropriate, come from production and harvesting systems that work with nature, that are sustainable, and be weary of corporate advertising, be wary of processed foods, and promote the overall health of communities. So how would you ensure that your government would ensure physical and economic access to sufficient, culturally appropriate food for all people in Canada, and that our food system is rooted in principles of health, equity, and environmental sustainability.
Thank you. Marcus?
Well, thanks for the question. I think one of the parts of that question goes to food sustainability and local food supplies, which we certainly want to encourage. The Liberals put $50 million into an infrastructure program to give money towards local food sustainability, and I would certainly encourage that. Another part of your question goes to, and I think you're getting at, food supplies in Indigenous communities. And I've worked a couple of years in Indigenous communities, and you go to the northern store and you try to buy a quart of milk or an apple or something, it's just ridiculously priced. There's certainly a problem, I think, with access to good and affordable food in those communities. And I would certainly say that the Liberal Party is probably will be aware of that kind of problem. And I certainly personally feel that this is a very real problem of food access that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Amanda?
Thank you very much. One of the things that the Green Party is very focused on doing is putting an awful lot of money into the research and support that farmers need to shift from the current model of farming that they have to something that's more sustainable, something that won't actually harm the food supply going forward. We're also going to set a target to replace a third of Canada's food imports with domestic production. What that's going to do is actually return 15 billion food dollars back into our economy, and this will be through local supply. We also want to restore the prairie farm rehabilitation measures. So I understand that this here isn't specific prairie. However, with that there's an awful lot of prairie regions in Ontario that will benefit from this, and with this initiative, it's going to increase a lot of things, including the soil quality. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Yuksem?
Everyone deserves to have access to food that's healthy and affordable. And it's unbelievable that so many children, seniors, and families are going hungry in one of the richest countries in the world. So the New Democrats are committed to making sure that no one goes hungry in Canada. To do that, we're going to work with farmers to get more affordable, healthy local food on the table in the communities across the country. We're going to tackle food waste with a national strategy to reduce waste and support initiatives that repurpose and process food that would otherwise head for the landfill. We want to support Indigenous food sovereignty and make sure that families in the North have access to healthy food. We want to help Canadians make ends meet with strong public services like affordable housing, universal pharmacare, and affordable, accessible childcare, which will leave more in their pockets to buy their groceries. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda?
This is one of those tough ones to try to answer in 1 minute. Health, equity, environmental sustainability, yes, they all go together. Cultural sensitivity. One thing that comes to my mind very quickly is, why do we have these genetically modified foods? We have to do away with that. We have to protect and have pure foods in our country. That's something that we need to work on very, very quickly. Something that hasn't been said is that the carbon tax is added to every item, including food, that is flown into communities or trucked into communities. So that carbon tax is an extra cost for everyone. The Conservative government, as its first act in Parliament, will cancel it. I could say more about that, but that's one reason we're canceling it. Also, we will be negotiating new trade agreements to support Canadian-grown foods. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Andrew?
One thing that I believe the government needs to do is, whoever gets in, whatever it is, the government needs to respect the farmer, because without the farmer, there is none of this. And in this country, being from a small farm in Northern Ontario, I could tell you that the farmers left alone to do, it's up to them. There is no handouts, there's not a lot of subsidies, there's minimal insurance. You can't get that stuff through the government. If you're a small farmer in this area, you're on your own. And that there's very little help from that. We need to start realizing that if we didn't have the farmer, there wouldn't be any of this. And one other thing we want to do is get rid of things like supply management, so that phase it out throughout time, so when there is milk and cheese and all that stuff up in north, it's not crazy expensive like it is now.
Thank you. And Marcus, you have 30 seconds to make any further comments on this topic.
I wanted to address part of the question was on culturally appropriate food supply. So yes, there is money available from the federal government towards science and innovation with respect to food. Agri-marketing, $120 million, agri-science, $150 million, agri-innovation, $350 million. As to culturally appropriate food, I know Seine River is interested in getting their wild rice production going. This is certainly, I think, the kind of area maybe we're talking about. It's big business in Minnesota. We should start making money off it here. It's great for the local economy. It's great for employing people.
Thank you so much. Okay, our next question is from Nathan from the Chamber of Commerce, and the first response will be from Amanda. Nathan?
It's been 50 years since Canada last undertook a comprehensive review of our tax system. The cutting and pasting approach of tax credit implementation has left our system uncompetitive, cumbersome, and inefficient. Business owners and tax practitioners report frustration and a need to commit significant time, often at a considerable expense, to deal with the taxation and filing issues. If elected, will your party appoint a royal commission to conduct a comprehensive review of the Canadian tax system, guided by the principles of tax competitiveness, simplicity, fairness, and neutrality? Why or why not?
Absolutely. But in addition to that, we're also going to implement the Council of Canadian Governments. So what that's going to allow us to do is actually have these conversations across all levels of government. So that means federally, provincially, territorially, Indigenous, municipal, and rural governments all will have these conversations so that we can make these policy priorities and have conversations so that the people in this area here are actually getting the best bang for their buck and they're not living so poor anymore. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Roxanne?
So the tax system right now, 2 out of 3 Canadians are getting no relief. The rich are getting richer and the rest of us are getting left behind. The new Democrat government wants to make fundamentally different choices. Our fiscal policies will put everyday Canadians and their families first. We want to raise revenues through new, fair, and progressive taxation sources. We want to close the loopholes that are currently being tax havens and where big corporations are able to store away money that away from our revenue source, as well as to tax those who are making $20 million or more. We're going to raise the tax by 1% to ensure that our services are able to be funded for the rest of us. So it is something that we need to review and we need to do differently. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda?
Okay. Tax system. Comprehensive review, yes, that would be very helpful. 80% of Canadians today pay $800 more per year in taxes than they did 4 years ago. That's 80% of Canadians are paying through a variety of different taxes than they did a few years ago. And a Conservative government seeks to reduce those taxes, various ones, lowering the lowest tax rate for the lowest category. That'll be a big one, especially for people like my mom who are living on a modest income in a modest home. You know, hundreds of dollars will help her there. Reducing or taking away, actually, the tax on home heating, canceling the carbon tax, simplifying. We have too many taxes. But as far as the income tax, it definitely needs review. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yes, we need to do something like that. We need to take a look at our tax system because right now there's taxes all over. Like, we need to get rid of the carbon taxes, number one, because right now we have a tax. It's called the gas tax. And we're also paying tax on a tax right now, and people can't afford it. Right now in this country, there's basically two groups of people, the rich and the poor, because that's pretty much the system they have. And a lot of families are struggling, and like I said, I come from a big family, and a majority of them are wondering if they can actually pay their hydro bill or, upgrade their vehicle or do other things. And it's really hard right now, and we need to look at our tax system, and we need to help the lower income and help the struggling families and help people actually get ahead.
Thank you. Marcus?
To answer your question, yes, the Liberals will engage in publicly a reported review of several existing tax measures and will take actions to make taxes more fair. This includes taking steps to crack down on corporate tax evasion and avoidance and asking the wealthiest Canadians to pay a little bit more. And there's a whole bunch of things that ensue with that. They're talking about trying to ensure that multinational companies don't go from jurisdiction to avoid taxation, to improve whistleblower provisions, to cut down on tax loopholes, and to make sure that the tech giants who are making money in Canada pay some tax on that income. As to the complexities of the system, I'm totally sympathetic as someone who's written legislation. You don't want to write legislation that's so damn difficult to understand that you have to have a PhD in economics to fill out your tax return, and I certainly sympathize with making that easier.
Thank you. And Amanda, you have 30 seconds for any further comments on this question.
Perfect. The Green Party is very focused on honest, ethical, caring leadership. What that means is we are going to open up these conversations right across all party lines and across all levels of government so that we can actually have effective taxation without more words on paper that really don't do anything but hurt more people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next question is from Bonnie from the Lakehead Social Planning Council, and the first response will be Yuksem. Bonnie.
Thank you. The poverty rate for families with children has declined, likely due to key investments like the Ontario Child Benefit, the Canada Child Benefit, and full-day kindergarten. Families without children, though, are not as economically advantaged. Poverty rates for this group, for single people and couples without children, now represent 72% of households experiencing low income. What would your party do to alleviate this new imbalance and discrepancy in tax benefits?
Yuksem?
So could you just repeat the last piece of that question? Sorry.
What's the question?
What would your party do to alleviate this new imbalance and discrepancy in tax benefits?
So the one thing that we can do is to make sure that life becomes more affordable for all, right? So those are things like building and investing in affordable housing, implementing pharmacare right away, which will not only help our medical and our health system, but also ensure that you can get your medication, dental, vision, and mental health with a health card, not a credit card. And those are things that will impact everyone, as well as ensuring that we have the social supports to make our safe, vibrant communities grow. And those are things that are implemented across all populations, not just targeted at certain ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda?
Okay, under the Conservative platform, the benefits for children will continue. Activities will be instituted. For other folks, how to help you get ahead is the Conservative plan aim, how to help you get ahead. Well, for one thing, that income tax rate will be decreased for the lower income folks. anyone 47,000 is actually a pretty decent amount. Any 47,000 or so and less, so the income tax rate will be decreased. That will help, say about $850 on 47,000 would help in a whole household for sure. Should. The thing is that many of these people have already raised their children and or they have disabilities, and that's where the social needs come in. The Conservative platform says at least 3% increase per year for the next 4 years for all those social needs.
Thank
and then
you,
it's
Linda.
up to the provinces. Yeah.
Thank you. Andrew.
We need to help cut taxes. Our party is looking at for cutting down for personal tax breaks for. That's one of the biggest things right now, because like I said, the taxes are crazy around here. We also need to work on infrastructure and businesses in our own country and work on Canada first and just help basically create jobs instead of sending them elsewhere. And we need to actually just focus on bringing skilled workers here and building infrastructure and getting that kind of all that stuff done. We need to work on our tax structures and just growing our economy and trying to put money into our own economy instead of everyone else's, and things like building the pipeline and doing stuff that focuses on us first instead of other countries.
Thank you. Marcus.
So your question is how to make things better off for people on limited income without kids. Now, to begin with, let me say that there's a whole bunch of liberal provisions related to families with children, and it's there for a reason. I've got 5 kids, and I certainly understand having children adds a lot of costs to your life. Now, having said that, there are plenty of things that the Liberals have done to raise people out of poverty into the middle class, growing the middle class. For example, they've proposed to increase the basic personal exemption up to $15,000, which will mean more money in the pockets of people up to $40,000. Another thing that's probably important, a lot of people, an important part of their life is having a home. And there's the first-time home buyers incentive, which will give you 10% of the cost of a new house and 5% of the cost of an older home. So we've done plenty to, I think, address this issue.
Thank you very much. Amanda.
Thank you. There's an awful lot the Green Party wants to do, including bringing more long-term sustainable jobs to the area. And what that's going to do is increase the quality of life for anybody. In addition to that, we're also going to implement the guaranteed livable income. And what that means is when you have those lulls between jobs, you still have the actual protection there. So you can continue on living life, not being so afraid, but you can also upgrade your skills and things like that. In addition to that, the Green Party is very focused on free tuition. So what that means is people that want to advance their skills can, and they can do it affordably. Thank you very much.
And Yoksam, you have 30 seconds for any further comments.
So I think one of the things that the NDP truly does understand is that Band-Aid solutions and just giving tax breaks or little incentives to this pocket or that is not sustainable and it's not helping our communities grow. So we think that we have to get to the root of the problem, and we need to implement systems that help everyone get ahead. So that we have communities that are safe, where businesses can thrive, and that families want to stay in the north. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is from Jason from the Anishinaabe Business Professionals Association, and the response will be first from Linda. So Jason, your question, please.
Thank you. Today, the Indigenous economy is growing at an exponential rate. Indigenous people contribute over $30 billion annually to Canada's GDP. This is projected to increase to $100 billion by 2024. First Nation people are also starting businesses at 9 times the Canadian average. These Indigenous businesses will need access to capital, markets, and ultimately business opportunities. What is your party doing to promote First Nation inclusion in procurement processes to ensure that Indigenous businesses can prosper?
Linda.
Thank you. That was lots of good news to hear. Those statistics are impressive. There will be, I know, help continued for economic development. There has been between Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Native Development Officers Group across the country. And I know that many of those businesses got started because of that good work. And I was involved with a 2-year project here with Fort William First Nation. I don't pretend to be an expert on Indigenous per se business, okay? I'm right up front with that. But I would think that a conservative government that always does well for the economy and making jobs, creating jobs, will be helping all sectors of our country, including the Indigenous. And of course, we all do better if we're all well off and working.
Thank you, Linda.
Of us who are able.
Andrew.
Our party has a plan to work with Indigenous communities and help businesses grow. We're, like I said, it's in our platform. We want to work with them. We need to actually help them grow and help them sustain businesses and help things happen, because on an average right now, we spend about $20 billion on reserves, and around my area, I'm surrounded, I have quite a few reserves around Rainy River, and a lot of them are still struggling. They still have issues, and they're not being addressed. And we're having a really tough time in the area where, as I said, we still have boil water advisories, we still have housing issues and things like that. So we want to work together with the communities and actually help them prosper, so we're not just fixing it with the Band-Aid. There's a real issues there that needs to be fixed.
Thank you.
I liked the question. I liked how you incorporated the numbers in it. In my mind, that was pretty impressive. I think really the way forward for Indigenous communities is 1, education, and 2, business opportunities. And now the federal government, there is already available, as I'm sure you probably know, an Aboriginal business and entrepreneurship development assistance where you can get up to $99,999 for individuals and $250,000 for community businesses in order for business projects. I know also in the platform that the Liberal government has promised to incorporate Indigenous people into their decision making so they benefit from the exploitation of resources in their territory. And I guess mostly directly answering your question is the government has promised to try to make sure that 5% of government procurements go to Indigenous companies.
Thank you. Amanda?
I think it's really important that we first of all recognize that the First Nations communities need to take the lead role in this. So we have to follow what they need, and they will tell us. They really will, but we need to open up those lines of communication. So we need to do this in a responsible way. I totally agree that education is a very important thing, which is why in most treaties it's already been stated that they were to put schools on reserves. But I don't know, maybe we should start by honoring the treaties, and I think that's exactly what the Green Party is going to do 100%. We are going to uphold Canada's fiduciary responsibility, and we are going to fulfill Canada's responsibilities in agreement, honor treaties, and respect all rights of Indigenous people. Now with that too, we're also going to, with the Indigenous leaders at the helm, establish a process for self-governing. And what this is going to do is take them out of the current unworkable framework and get all of us into a situation where we can work together. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. For decades now, Indigenous peoples have been seeking for a new fiscal relationship with the Crown, and we need to support that and make room at the table for those relationships to form. We know that the communities are looking for employment and economic opportunities to create good jobs, and we need to make room for that too. The new Democratic government will work with Indigenous communities to make sure that there's the infrastructure that is needed to thrive, which means access to the internet and broadband, access with roads and housing to support the people that are there. We will also have specific initiatives that are looking to support the Indigenous entrepreneurs, like making sure that FedNor is a standalone regional system. Here, it's an agency here for the North, and that they can access some of those funds specifically for Indigenous entrepreneurs and businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. And Linda, you have 30 seconds if you wish to make any further comments in this response.
Creation of jobs should always be a condition if any provincial or federal government is involved. I remember years ago when only 25% Canadian content, for example, was set here at Bombardier, and I said at the time that would not be enough. I was correct. It should have been 50%. And similarly, I would hope that any money, whether it's providing services to an area for mining or forestry, anything like that, near the communities, would have a condition for jobs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on to our next question. The question will be from Charles with the food strategy, and the first response will come from Andrew. So Charles, your question, please.
Great. So Canada has severely lagged behind other advanced, economically advanced countries in supporting a national school food program. In fact, we are the only country in the group of 7 that does not offer a federally funded school program. So today, 1 out of 6 children and youth experience food insecurity in Canada, and of course this number is much higher in First Nations. And this despite Canada's commitment to a right to food for all. So studies have shown that a lack of sufficient and adequate food can have serious impact on children's physical and psychological development and their ability to function in school. So the question is, would you and your party support a universal healthy school food program? And if so, what steps would you take to make this happen?
Andrew.
I think that's a great question. I would absolutely do that because, like I said, coming from a small town, like in Rainy River, for example, our town, like it really counts on that program because it is a big part, because that way we know that a lot of kids won't go hungry and stuff. It is a huge program for this area, and we definitely need to look at something like that, because like in today's day and age, there should never even be a question if a kid can go to school hungry. That shouldn't even be an issue, but we would definitely look at that. And looking at the main places where they need it, where they need it the most, whether it's smaller areas and things like that, we need to focus on where they need it and just go from there.
Thank you. Marcus.
I have to admit, I think the Liberals there is a national food policy, and I think they were the first government to actually implement a national food policy. I'm not sure if there's anything in the platform related to national school programs. I would certainly think that we would be interested in such an idea. I remember going to live in Boston and going into the local school, and the woman there asked and said, do your kids, how much money do you make? And I said, well, I'm a doctor and I don't think I'm going to qualify for the food program. And she said, no, how much do you make? And I said, well, I'm at school here. I'm not making a whole heck of a lot of money. And she said, you qualify. And so my kids got free food, and I could think that's kind of interesting in the United States. Kids were getting food from their government. Maybe we could do more, and I would think certainly if we can make a case for it and there's the money available, I would think that the liberal governments would be interested in that idea.
Thank you, Marcus. Linda.
Thank you very much. That is absolutely an initiative that the Green Party does 100% support. But in addition to that, my daughter is Aboriginal, and one of the things that she's very much benefited from is the Aboriginal Head Start program. With that program, she has learned not only how to eat healthier, but how to prepare her own foods. So, as I was saying before, one of the things that the Green Party is going to do is implement the Canadian Council of Governance so that we can have these conversations across party lines, across different jurisdictions, so that we can actually get the funding to the programs that we need. So that way our kids can eat more healthy every day. Thank you very much.
Roxanne?
So not only does the NDP believe in that we need to have a school nutrition program, we know that it's there. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to make for a case for it because it's already in our platform, and we've already known for a long time that this is an initiative that we must take care of. As a teacher, I've seen firsthand what the impact is when children don't have access to that healthy food. And in our society now, with things becoming more and more unaffordable, and that we have to make decisions sometimes about what types of food we're buying for our children, because you can get the burger and the processed food really cheaply, but then the fruits and vegetables are so expensive that we need to make sure that at school, children have everything they need to be able to learn and grow and prosper.
Thank you. Linda.
Children, especially in elementary school, need that Head Start, the Fair Start. There's an indication, though, that there's issues in the families if those kids are coming without food, without good food. So there's a deeper problem here. Provinces, and I know many schools here in Thunder Bay, are dealing with it, and it didn't used to be that way. We should think about that. Why is it that these kids don't have food? Is it because it's too costly for the parents? Is it because the parents are not getting up in time to make them lunches to take to school? What's happening there? Certainly, provincial governments, local school boards are working on it. But it's sad. I worry about our society when there's that need, okay? I mean, I agree with providing it, but I worry about our society when there's the need for the public at large to provide food for children.
Thank you, Linda. And we have 30 seconds for Andrew, if you have any further comments on this. He's good. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. Then we're going to move on to our closing statements as time is winding up here. So each candidate will have 1 minute to provide a closing statement. These will be done in the reverse order of the opening statements. So we will start with Linda. You have 1 minute.
I am hoping that we will choose change this fall and elect a majority Conservative government. The Conservative platform promises cancellation of the carbon tax. By 2022, it will be about $1,100 a year per household. Cancel it. Tax-free maternity benefits. Cancellation of the GST on home heating. Guarantee of health and social transfer payments to the provinces. New money for MRI and CT machines. A reduced income tax rate, a real plan to protect our environment, a fair process for immigration, support for legal gun owners, ethical leadership, and improved financial management overall. There's an even longer list of recommendations. Look at votelinda.ca, the website. We need real change, positive change. Please vote Conservative. Linda Ridholm here in Thunder Bay, Rainy River.
Thank you. Dixon?
Thank you. I think the issue that we're all facing is that life is becoming more and more affordable for the rest of us, right? We need to address the issues that are at the root of those problems. We need to be able to have a government that chooses people and communities over corporations and pipelines. And we need to be able to make a choice not based on fear and scare tactics, but actually on what's best for Canada and Canadians. And that choice is with the NDP. We have a vision for a Canada where no one gets left behind. We have a vision for a Canada that is helping communities and helping people build and prosper and have a chance to move forward. It is something that the NDP truly believes that making better, that having people and communities as our priority will lead to different choices, and that's the only way that we're going to get different outcomes. Thank you. Yuksam One,
Thank
NDP.
you. Amanda?
Thank you. In this election, people are concerned with voting to stop climate change or to put more money in their pocket. As your MP, I will do both. I will bring jobs, long-term sustainable jobs, to this region. From manufacturing jobs at Bombardier, to retrofitting existing buildings, to making them carbon neutral, and expanding our power grid laterally so more power runs east to west, not just to our neighbors to the south. Jobs that will transition us to a green economy. Greens work to ensure the needs of the people who live, work, and study here are met. Contrary to what was promised to us in 2015, this is the next first past the post election. But it is different from those of the past because we're going to have a minority government. This is much to the disappointment of the candidates here that are telling you to use fear to sway your decision. We have a woman MP. We will have a woman MP representing us after this election. A vote for a Green MP is a vote for a kind of government that you want. Remember this when you vote, and vote for your conscience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. Marcus.
We live in a world of increasingly political polarization on the right and the left. I think there's a real substantial thirst in this country for a party of moderation, a centrist party, a party that believes in doing things for the disadvantaged, that there's an obligation for us to do that, but a party that also realizes the importance of small business and the fact that a robust economy is the engine that pulls all of our social programs, a party that also believes in tolerance, and a party that believes in fiscal responsibility. Now, this constellation of beliefs, I think everybody claims to have, but I think there's one party and one party only that truly believes in those things, and that's the Liberal Party and only the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Marcus. Andrew.
Listen, I'm sure we can all agree I'm not a public speaker. I'm probably not the best speaker around here. I'm literally just a small town councillor with a disability, which is probably maybe fumbling my words a little bit tonight. But like I said, I was just somebody that was tired of the same old stuff. We've all sat up here and gave you our little promises and what we can do and things we can do. You know, everyone's going to say it'll be different this time. Well, a lot of times it's not. And there's some parties up here that we keep going back and forth to the same old thing. Change it 4 years, come back again, and you know maybe they'll forget about it. So, but to me, I'm just a small town guy that wants to try and make a change and bring honesty to Ottawa, honestly, because I don't have any cheat sheets up here. I'm pretty much just winging it. So I'm not going to lie. I haven't really been coached on how to do this kind of stuff. I'm just hoping you vote for me on October 21st.
Thank you very much. So that concludes tonight's Candidates Forum. Let's give another round of applause to the candidates for Thunder Bay Rainy River. Great job. Special thanks to our media supporter, Net News Ledger. The forum will be available to watch on netnewsledger.com as well as on T-Baytel's Neighborhood Channel and Shaw Cable. Thanks to our host, Confederation College, our partners and panelists from the Anishinaabe Business Professional Association, the Lakehead Social Planning Council, the Area Food Strategy, and thanks to all of you for attending. Go out and vote. Thanks for coming. Have a great night.